So what we're going to do, we're going to spend the next 2 hours with a 15-minute break. So a total of 2.25 hours, in fact. And we're going to discuss a number of topics. And interestingly, the topics have come not from us, but from the students. So based on the students' questions, we've developed a response, which we're going to share now. And hopefully we'll have a discussion, a dialogue. Very interested in your opinion. It's not intended that this is just a one-man show. So please, I very much welcome your contribution if you're able to share your thoughts and comments. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to share the screen, and that will let me share the document with you. And that lets me go here. Okay, so what we've got now is just hide that. What we've got now is the key document that we've said here. We're looking at key qualities which are found in today's aviation leaders. And we are making the comment that aviation leadership training and development should focus on exactly these qualities. So to prepare leaders for the demands of an industry which is rapidly evolving. And as we go through the different areas, you'll see that there are numerous challenges that are placed on people who aspire to be leaders. It's a very challenging, but by the same token, a very rewarding, let's say, endeavor. So a balance of technical knowledge, emotional intelligence, and strategic vision is crucial for ensuring effective leadership in the environment we're talking about, which is a complex, often high pressure environment. Okay, so what we're going to look at, we're going to look at, and because we could literally talk for days and weeks, but we're going to focus on a number of questions. The first is key leadership qualities required to navigate this evolving landscape that we talked about. The next one is strategies for leading teams effectively and consider during maintenance or operational challenges. And when you consider what can happen with, for example, if an airplane is AOG, you've got potentially hundreds of passengers, you've got impact on routes, timetables, and so on and so on. Very, very stressful. And often you find that a number of areas which need to be addressed are outside of your control. So you have to liaise and communicate, and that is one of the major aspects of what is required of a leader, the ability to communicate effectively and to make the most impact in the areas that he or she can directly affect. Okay, how to foster innovation and adaptability. And of course, the comment here, while maintaining compliance, we are primarily an EASA regulatory training provider. Having said that, there are a number of regulatory environments that we also involve and teach. For example, the FAA, we also provide FAA training. The Saudi Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the GCAA regulatory requirements, UAE GCAA, UAE, also overseas territories. So whilst we talk about in generic terms, compliance with EASA, you have to consider the relevance to your particular regulatory environment. Next one. How far can emotional intelligence affect interpersonal and business communication skills? We'll talk about that. How can aviation leaders handle challenges in the industry in an effective way? So we're going to look at that one. Here's a good question. What advice do you have for new aviation leaders starting their career? And that's a great question because it is a journey. Life is a journey, of course, but our business life is a journey of acquiring competency. And competency is a combination of knowledge, skills, and our attitude, our behavior. All of these are essential elements, if you like, of the overall competency. So we'll talk about this. How can I take my negotiation skills to the next level? That's another interesting question. Okay, so the first one then. And just to comment that we are recording this and it will be available on YouTube. Part 1 is going to be the first hour, and then part 2 will be the second hour. So, key leadership qualities required to navigate the rapidly evolving landscape. So what are we talking about? We're talking about when you discuss qualities, we're talking about the ability of a person to be able to engage with the challenge that they face. So, as we say in other places, can you train a leader? And the answer is, well, yes, of course. Everybody has the capacity to become a leader. What it boils down to is how much time and effort and energy you're personally willing to put into the challenge that you are going to meet, the multiple challenges, in fact, that you're going to meet to achieve your objective. So it's not something that you can say, I will become a leader and not put in the effort, because it's not going to take you where maybe you aspire. So let's just go through a few then. Visionary thinking, the ability to foresee industry trends, regulatory changes, technological advancements. These are high level, okay? We could go into a different area and we could say visionary thinking within your organization. What does it mean? Well, how does your organization function at the moment? How do you envisage your organization functioning in the future? What are the challenges that you're going to face? And unless you engage with this forward thinking, what tends to happen is you get disconnected. Moving away from aviation for a minute or two, a perfect example is the company called Kodak. Now, depending on your age, you may or may not remember what Kodak was all about. But going back a couple of decades before the era of smartphones, if you like, Kodak was one of the world's leaders in photographic activities and everything that was required for the masses. So they were one of the world's largest producers of film. When have you last bought a film? If you ever bought a film. And what happened with Kodak? They went from basically hero to zero. Yes, they're still around. they're still around, but they are incredibly humble. If you want to learn a lesson, go to YouTube and put in a search, what happened to Kodak? And you will understand what happens when you don't have visionary thinking. And it's an incredible story because there was a group within Kodak that was trying to develop digital camera technology, and it was basically pushed back by the leadership team because they saw it as disrupting the mainstream business. And to try and still progress, they actually hid, can you believe this? They hid the development of digital technology in Japan. And it was understood and discovered that they were doing this, and essentially it was closed down. It's madness, isn't it, to think about it, that people with vision were closed down within the organization because it didn't fit the current leadership mantra. And over again, you will see where you are not paying sufficient attention, you will just slowly sink into a mire. You will go out of business. Visionary leaders can guide their organization through innovation and disruption. But there's the challenge. What if you're not the leader? What if you are one of the, let's say, workers who have this vision? You can't change the leadership's mindset easily. That's where negotiation skills come in, because you've got to understand how I can engage with the challenge, not just of understanding what we need to do. Of course, it's my opinion, but what we need to do, I've now got to justify it, build a business case, and sell that business case to the leadership team. Okay, next, adaptability and agility. So we talk about the different, let's say, headwinds that we can face. And so what we've got to do is we've got to be able to adapt and to basically swim in the waters, no matter what that water is, threatening us with. And we've got to do it in the most, let's say, effective way. And by effective, what we're talking about is looking at what we need to achieve, how we can achieve it, how much time that we can allow ourselves, and making sure that we get a return on our investment. And this concept of ROI is so important to leaders. Why? Because your input is super valuable, but if you spend it in directions that do not give the best possible returns, then you're stepping backwards from the, let's say, the opportunity to achieve the best result. You must cultivate a culture of flexibility, encouraging quick decision making and responsiveness. What we mean here, as a leader, you've got to ensure that people within your teams have a framework of understanding by which they can deal with the challenges that they face. Some of the worst leadership styles is one which is called micromanagement. And with micromanagement, the leader requires to be responsible for every decision-making process. Everything must go through the leader. And when you do that, what happens is you limit yourself, because people are not, they do not have the freedom to make decisions. What we've got to do We've got to train our teams so that they have the knowledge, the competence, and understanding the business ethics, the framework, if you like, so that they can make appropriate decisions. And such an organization that can operate like this is going to flourish in ways organizations which choose to micromanage will not. Okay, the next one, resilience. What do we mean by resilience? It means the ability to face up to the challenges, to remain calm, to remain composed under pressure, but to be able to take positive steps to address what it is that's happened. For example, we could have safety incidents, we could have accidents, we could have incidents, we could have changes in the regulatory requirements, which we've got to address. We talk about economic turbulence. Well, we've all very recently experienced exactly that with COVID. And everybody listening to this will have their own COVID stories. And the companies that came out of COVID in good shape or still alive, maybe, they're the ones that can go on to benefit. But many companies did not come out of COVID. They fell over because they didn't have this word that we use, the resilience, to be able to deal with the different challenges. Okay, let's talk about emotional intelligence. What does emotional intelligence mean? So it enables us to understand in a way where we can genuinely empathize with team members, with passengers, with stakeholders, leading to more cohesive teamwork. When have you ever complained to somebody, and I'm sure we all have, maybe on the phone to a utility company or a service that you were expecting you didn't receive, and what's the first thing they say? I understand that you're not happy, and this is empathy. However, when it's delivered in a, let's say, robotic way, then it's completely smashed because simply they don't understand. They're just saying, I understand. That is totally not empathy. And instead of saying, I understand, there are multiple other ways that you can deal with it. Like, wow, that's not okay, is it? Let me look and see what I can do. Because immediately you're not saying, I understand, you're agreeing with them. And when you agree with a person, you get a different response from when you push back. This is the opposite. You're basically going into, let's say, an argumentative stance, or when you are patronizing the person with a false empathetic statement. Okay, so this is what we mean by emotional intelligence. Right. Decision making under uncertainty. Often we will have challenges where the decision I'm not sure why that popped up, where the decision is not obvious, and you've then got to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to make a decision? If we make a decision, what are our options? What is the positives? What's the negatives? And sometimes you finish up saying, okay, there is no good decision here. So let's make a decision based what is the least worst outcome that we can achieve. Just ignoring a problem seldom makes the problem go away. Conversely, making instant decisions is not good either. Is there any comments or questions so far? Okay. Please pop up if you would like to speak and share your thoughts. The next one, we talk about collaboration, because there are multiple fields involved in our business, multiple business areas, multiple activities, all integrating to deliver what we call aviation, if you like. So we need a culture of teamwork, open communication, and this word communication will keep coming in over and over again. Cross-functional collaboration between different areas, strong partnerships with external stakeholders means we've got to understand what our stakeholders, what our partners are expecting, so that we can play our part. Again, comes back to negotiating so that we have the win-win scenario, if you like. We need to ensure that organizations follow the regulations, of course. However, within that framework, we have an opportunity to develop in a way that is optimum for our organization. If you consider, for example, within Europe, there are a number of airlines, and I'm going to just mention three: Ryanair, EasyJet, and Wizz Air. Together, they have more than 1,000 aeroplanes. Individually, they all have hundreds of aeroplanes. Ryanair being the largest, I think they have more than 500 aeroplanes. I've lost count of the exact number, but I've been in aviation many decades, and I remember Ryanair starting with just 2 or 3 or 4 aeroplanes. So how to get from 2 or 3 or 4 aeroplanes to 500 aeroplanes, and that's the understanding. That's when you understand what it is that they did and how they met the customer's needs directly, not by imagining what the customer wants. And many countries have airlines, and they're almost like a national service. They don't necessarily make a profit, and it's a completely different type of business. But in Europe, where countries are not actually allowed to own an airline, not normally, it must then be a commercial venture. So consider the challenge of trying to compete with the likes of Ryanair, EasyJet, and Wizz. It's not easy. Ethical leadership. We need to have a safety first culture, open reporting of safety concerns. We want people to speak up. And if people don't speak up, or if people speak up and are suppressed, then the company doesn't go to a good place. Just think of the example of Boeing. Boeing is in the worst possible place. In the classroom at the moment, Boeing is standing in the corner with their face facing the wall. That's the situation. They've put themselves in that situation. This is not about Boeing, but we could do a Boeing workshop story, understanding what went wrong. I grew up with Boeing. I spent many months in Seattle whilst aeroplanes were 747s. In actual fact, aeroplanes were being constructed, and that company in the early 90s is a different company than exists now. They are in so much trouble. And as a takeaway, one of the best products that we have in our aviation system is called MEDA. If you've heard of MEDA, it stands for Maintenance Event Decision Aid. Used to be Maintenance Error Decision Aid. It was developed by Boeing and given FOC to the industry. If you go to the Sofema website, library area, you can see there's a whole section there on MEDA and understand. So what does MEDA do? MEDA helps you understand why you have issues or problems within the organization, and it helps you understand the contributing factors. So it's a bit of a paradox that the company that invented what was probably one of the best tools I've ever seen in my aviation career for working with operational and maintenance challenges fell into the pit of vipers that they have done. As I say, too much to unpack here, so we need to move on. Next, cultural competence ensures smoother international operation, better customer relation, and enhanced collaboration across the team. So again, these are important areas that we have to be able to address and to deal with. Next one, we talk about innovation. What does innovation mean? Well, at its simplest, it's asking the question, how can we do this in a better way? What are the solutions out there that we could use to deliver this in a more efficient, a more effective, in particular, cost-effective way? So that's something that we've always got to be aware of and connected with. Right, so that's it for the first area. Just to say that this document that we're going through now is also available on the Sofema download area. We've got an area of the library which is devoted to leadership, and you can see this document and many other documents as well. We also encourage communication between our clients, our customers, and suggestions, proposals, questions. For questions, we have a LinkedIn group, Sofema Online, a network that's available, and we welcome questions and we encourage dialogue there. Okay, let's continue. Let's talk about strategies for leading teams in high pressure environments. So we spoke before, we've already mentioned the need for communication, to be able to communicate clearly so that people understand what you're saying, but also remember that just speaking is not communicating. What I'm doing to you now, with you now, is partial communication. It's only when I get feedback that tells me that you've understood what I've said that we can say that we have established communication. So you must also take responsibility when you're communicating a message to ensure that the person receiving that message has understood it in the way that you wanted them to. Decisiveness, calmness, adaptability we've spoken about, and a strong focus on safety. We must never let go of the need to put safety at the very, very top of the story. If something happens, it can damage the organization, it can damage the reputation of the organization, and very, very quickly, your customers will disappear. Okay, next, to talk about this one. Hesitation can lead to delays or safety risks. So a decisive approach is necessary. So we've spoke about this and we're just looking at it in a different way. When we make a decision, we shouldn't rush into the decision. We should take our time and we should make sure we are making the best choice. And just because you are a leader does not automatically mean you have the answer. So a good leader will involve other people to understand the challenges that are being faced, as well as the implications of the different options. And over the decades, I've seen every possible type of leader where, for example, one person will say, listen, I'm the boss. This is how it's going to be done. It's my way or the highway. And no time for people interfering with my decisions. That only has negative outcomes. There's no positives at the end of that story. So we need to develop decision-making frameworks for emergency or high pressure situations. And as I said before, creating a framework that enables people to make decisions is the best way any organization can function. So there are some decisions that need to be taken by the leadership team, of course, but there are many, many decisions which can be taken throughout the organization by the organization's employees. What can you do? Practice stress management, lead by example, maintain a composed attitude, even in critical situations. This is why we say, can you teach leaders? Yes, you can teach people to de-stress, to not be stressed, to cope with their environment in an effective way. And essentially, if you have a number of problems that are requiring your immediate attention, the first thing you've got to do is decide which problems are the biggest problems for you right now. And you've got to make that decision, because what you can't do is you can't functionally involve at the same time to the required depth with 10 different problems. So the question you ask yourself, which is the biggest problem I need to address? This is something you will do internally, and it will be based on a number of factors. For example, which problem has the most potential to harm the business? Which problem has the most potential to affect the revenue of the business? Which problem has the most opportunity to disrupt the business, and so on. So based on a number of criteria that you can develop yourself so that you deal with it, you take each problem in turn and you do what you need to do. What do I need to do with this problem? Do I need to resolve it, or can I support somebody else to resolve it? If I can support somebody else to resolve it, then I can move to the next one. So what we're talking about is a structured, deliberate approach to methodically addressing the challenges that you face. If you don't do this, you will just get into a situation where you're not able to cope. And that's when people say, it's all too much for me. I need some mental health time and so on and so on. And it's true. When that person says it, that's what they need. But this is a journey, and you can avoid that situation by training yourself to deal with the challenges that are faced in a structured way. Empowering the team to take ownership, which also means empowering the team to take responsibility when we are dealing with and addressing our problems. And again, delegating tasks so that people are able to support you. But to do that, you need to have a framework where people have been trained and are competent. Now, as a training organization, and this year we will enroll more than 35,000 people in our online training programs, huge number. So we know very well which companies are training their employees and which companies only provide training when it's conceived to be mandatory. What do I mean? Well, if you are a maintenance certifying staff, for example, you have mandatory training. If you are a post holder, you have mandatory training. If you are working in other areas, you have mandatory training. But if you want to grow people's competence and abilities, you've got to step outside of that mandatory training. And many of our customer companies do exactly that. And interestingly, they are the ones that benefit from their employee engagement. They're the ones whose business flourishes and grows because of that level of engagement with the training needs of their employees. Attention to detail. Careful and precise attention to detail to also ensure that the team members follow procedures. So what we need is a framework within which people can operate. We don't want the framework to be over restrictive, but we want the framework to deal with the challenges the organization faces in a effective way, so that each of our team will deal with a problem in a similar way. If everybody deals with a problem differently, we're not going to be in a good place. So precision and accountability become important. Train teams to be flexible and create contingency plans for various scenarios. Again, this type of training is only carried out where organizations are choosing to be proactive. I spent a number of years working for Virgin Atlantic. I spent actually 15 years of my career was at Virgin Atlantic back in the 90s through to 2005. And so that means that my big boss was Richard Branson. Yes, I met him several times, and many of the leadership, let's say, best practices came natural to Richard Branson, including training. I had huge training whilst I was employed with Virgin because their attitude was recognizing the importance of training. And one of the comments was, what happens if we train our employees and they leave? And the answer from Richard Branson is, what happens if you don't train your employees and they stay. And the message is that by not training people, the organization suffers from the, let's say, a lower level of engagement. And sticking with what happens if we train our employees and they leave, some employees are always going to leave. But what we've got to do is to create an environment where employees don't want to leave. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge in itself. And maybe that's something for another day. Okay, spoke about safety being a top priority. And we spoke about training. Encourage a collaborative mindset through regular team building exercises and open communication. The more information that we can get back from our team regarding challenges, the more opportunity that we have to dig into the challenges and to understand how we can improve. Just to say, because you know something is wrong does not mean that you can necessarily fix it. But by understanding it, you can place it in the correct, let's say, order with other elements and aspects that also need to be considered. Again, we're talking about management of time, personnel, and equipment, because if we are not focused on exactly the ability to manage time so that our employees are as effective as they can be. And one of the comments that I have heard over the years, which I like very much, because it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. And that's not just a glib throwaway. It's actually incredibly true, because unless you are working in an efficient and effective way and you're able to measure it so that you're happy that that is correct, you're going to be working in a way that is not beneficial to the health of the organization. So you could be busy the whole day, not moving your nose from your computer, for example. But if that work that you're doing is not adding value to your business process, then that's exactly the point I'm making. So we need to make sure that our team is as effective as we can possibly make it. And most companies of a certain size, and if you are in a company or you work for a company, let's say with more than 100 employees, you're going to have employees. And I'm going to give an analogy here that you're on a train. Your company is a train on a journey. And some people in your company are going to be train drivers. They're going to be driving that train. And that doesn't mean the leadership team. This is at every level of the organization. You find train drivers. Without train drivers, your company is not going to function in the best way. You've also got conductors. Conductors are there to make sure everything's okay, to check, to help, to provide support and guidance, to oversee what's taking place on the journey, and the conductor is supporting the train driver. And then you've got passengers. And when a company has too many passengers, not enough conductors, not enough drivers, that's when they start to be in trouble, because passengers need to be told what to do. You need to be told which is your seat. You need to be told when you can go to the buffet car or whatever. You need to be given instructions. And it's a very, very good analogy. And you can look in your organization and see and ask the question, do we have enough trained drivers? Do we have enough conductors? And then the next comment is, can we train passengers to be conductors and drivers? And the answer is absolutely. Of course you can. Of course you can. Okay. Next one, let's talk about this. How to foster innovation and adaptability. So what we're trying to do now, we're trying to create strategies or behaviors so that the organization can strike a balance between the innovation and compliance. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we remain compliant with the regulations, with the rules, with the requirements as an organization, but at the same time, we are driving innovation. So innovation refers to the introduction of new ideas, technologies, or processes, even within a simple business process. You can innovate. And sometimes people, look outside of the story and they look too high and they say, oh, well, we need to get software systems. We need this, we need that. An example, one guy I was speaking to, we were talking, I'm not going to mention names of a software provider, but a software provider of quality and safety software. And the guy I was speaking to, he said, oh, we bought this. He was actually the accountable manager. And I said, oh, okay. I said, how are you getting on with it? He said, it's too complicated. We don't use it. I said, how much did you pay? He said, 45,000 euros. I said, wow, that's painful. He said, yes. And just to share with you, as I said, I left my company Virgin in 2005. And in 2005, the quality system, and at that time, the company had 26 aeroplanes. The quality system was being managed extremely okay on an Excel sheet. So when somebody with one or two airplanes tells me that their priority is to get software, I have to say, why? Because if you take a software that is not functionally appropriate for your company, you then bend your company into the software and you find yourself being taken in directions that you don't necessarily want to go. And I had this conversation several times in the past. I'm a software system auditor, and I've been involved in auditing quite substantial softwares that didn't cost 45,000 euros, that cost some actually millions of euros. And one of the comments is, does the software support the business process and objectives? Sure, we can make improvements. We can optimize. But when it takes us in a totally different direction, maybe that's not what we're trying to achieve. And certainly at the beginning of any organizational journey, you've got to think very, very carefully about this subject. The comment before we move from this page is, any new ideas, any technology changes, which includes software, of course, all operational processes should be designed with compliance in mind. And that's the main message there. Okay, the next one to talk about, promoting a culture of continuous learning and compliance awareness. So meetings, communication, again, remembering the two-way story. Compliance and innovation workshop. If you have this, if you give people an opportunity to talk about your challenges that your business faces in each of your business areas, and you're then able to measure the, let's say, the pain that the business feels, you will then understand where you can focus your improvements. And it's a big part of an effective business process, is this culture of learning and compliance awareness. And it's something that needs to be factored in. Okay, next one, collaborating with regulatory bodies. And one of the interesting things here is the regulatory authority makes rules. That's their job. They make rules. And then they change the rule, or they improve the rule, or they update the rule. So why are they doing all this? And the answer is because it's a fluid environment and the rules are not cast in stone. Just because the rule says you have to do something does not prevent you from doing something plus something else. And maybe you will find that that something else in the future becomes part of the rule. So the challenge that I have when I talk to people who are responsible for regulatory compliance is to understand that EASA regulations is not a destination. Means if your organization is ticking every single box that EASA has created, does not mean your organization will flourish. So a better way of looking at it is the EASA regulatory environment is a step on your journey. It's not the entirety of the journey. And just because you're doing everything that the regulation says does not mean your organization will be successful. That's a whole different story. And so here's an example. So we are using our systems, our compliance system, for example, to assess compliance with the regulations. So we've got a framework, we've got a process, we've got a mechanism. How about we use that to look at some other aspects of our organization? For example, our customer engagement. Could we do that? For sure we could. But how many organizations do exactly that? Because the perception is, I am the compliance manager. My job is to make sure we're compliant with the EASA. End of story. Not interested in anything else. Are them people out there? Of course. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because are we going to describe that person as a train driver, a train conductor, or a passenger? In actual fact, we could argue that they are a passenger, which is a challenge, isn't it? And then occasionally they step up in a specific area and they will do a little bit of driving. So again, the message is an all-round awareness of the health of the company, and everybody in the organization becomes a stakeholder in the success of the company, and people with the correct competency and training should be the ones that are involved in activities which will benefit improvements in the company. So that's part of the challenge that we face. Okay. Next, to talk about this one, building a risk-tolerant environment. Leaders should encourage a mindset that balances calculated risk-taking with a strong commitment to safety and compliance. Because without being prepared to take risks and step out, then it's likely that you're going to fall behind. Other people will be taking risks. And when we say take a risk, we're not saying bet the company on a particular outcome, not at all. What we're saying is be prepared to try something. Be prepared to move in a direction that is not so comfortable. If possible, if we've got an idea, test it in a controlled environment. And then if we're happy with it within the controlled environment, we can let it out and work with it in our mainstream. Let's talk now about human factors. So this is a very, very interesting story. As Sofema, my company, we train human factor trainers. We deliver human factor training both in the classroom as webinar and online. And so we have quite a fundamental knowledge built up over the years. So where are we with human factor training? So human factor training is currently mandatory for maintenance staff. It's mandatory for camo staff. It's mandatory for pilots, but it's called something else. It's called CRM, which stands for Crew Resource Management. And so it's all human factor training. What have I not mentioned? I haven't mentioned operations, because operators do not have any mandatory human factor requirement. So we do provide human factor. For example, for ramp operations, we provide human factor training. But very few organizations choose to do the human factor training. Why? Because it's not mandatory. So is the reason you're doing training because it's necessary for your organization, or because there's a legal obligation? Think about it. Because the organizations that say, if it's not necessary, I don't want to do it, they're the organizations who are involved in numerous unexpected, unwanted events. For example, ground equipment running into airplanes. The cost of damage on the aircraft ramp, on the airport ramp, is horrendous. It runs into literally billions. Maybe you saw an aeroplane taxiing take the entire tail off another aeroplane. Examples, just perfect examples of the importance of human factor training programs. So if you don't develop human factor training programs, you're missing the opportunity to, let's say, optimize your business. And it can be done at a level which is appropriate for the business. But to do zero because you don't legally have to is totally and utterly missing the point, really. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll come back in 15 minutes. So thank you very much and see you at quarter to the hour. Thank you.